In the previous video, you have studied about a number of tests that could be used for the identification of the vaginal secretion, and those tests are presumptive in nature. Now here in this video, you are going to study about the confirmatory test of for used for the identification of vaginal secretion. So these confirmatory tests could be destructive in nature or it could be non-destructive in nature. The one which are non-destructive, in these tests the sample will retain its property, uh, um, will has the ability to retain its property, whereas in the destructive the sample is going to destroy or would be consumed in the time of analysis. So in the non-destructive, the technique that could be used are based upon instrumentation techniques. So these instrumentation techniques that could be used for the analysis in non-destructive tests are fluorescence spectroscopy, and the other is the Raman spectroscopy. The thing that is suggested is to do the non-destructive test prior to destructive. So once you are done with these two tests, now you can use the same sample for the analysis of the destructive test, that is RT-PCR. What RT-PCR is? It is reverse transcriptase polymerase chain reaction technique, in which the mRNA of the tissue specific genes of vaginal epithelial cells can be detected. So the two commonly used markers for vaginal secretion identification are MUC4 and HBT1. So MUC4 is a marker that encodes a mucin protein that is a major component of a vaginal mucus, and HBT1, the human beta defensin 1, encodes a vaginal antimicrobial peptide. So these both markers MUC4 and HBT1 are expressed in vaginal epithelial cells and are considered reliable marker of vaginal fluid. Now the thing is, till this point you have studied about a number of tests that could be used for the analysis of vaginal secretion and a number of tests that could be used for the identification of seminal secretion. But why are we studying this? Because such samples could become for the analysis in the in the Department of Forensic Biology for the identification. But in what kind of cases? In the cases of sexual assault like rape or bestiality or sodomy or other kinds of cases, or child abuse you can also say. So what happened, the major proportion of the sample that come for the analysis is either vaginal or you can say the seminal one, but it could have chances that you may get the sample as a blood for as an evidence, but the blood in such cases could also become as a result of the menstruation. So you should be aware or you should be acknowledged that how to differentiate the menstruation blood from the normal blood that is an outcome of the bleeding. So thus you have to study various characteristics of the menstruation blood. So first of all, what menstruation is? Menstruation is the periodic discharge of the blood and the elimination of the degenerated lining of endometrium from the uterus of a non-pregnant woman. From menarche to menopause, that is from the commencement of the menstruation to the cessation of the menstruation, women may menstruate up to 400 times during the reproductive age. That is, she used to ovulate around 400 times during her life cycle. If you go with the identification feature, so its physical appearance used to be a gel kind of structure which is called as trickling descent, and it's upon the microscopic examination you would be able to visualize some vaginal epithelial cells, residual cells or endometrial cells. If you go with the biochemical identification, there is a product which is called as fibrin degradation product. What this product is, the thing is the blood which is present in the menstrual blood, um, it is in liquid in nature. Why? Because in this blood there is an inhibition of the coagulation or inhibition of the agglutination does take place. So this inhibition is due to the process called as fibrinolysis. So because of the fibrinolysis process, the blood used to reliquefy even after the clotting. So this whole reliquefaction used to take prior to the menstrual period. So because of this reliquefaction or the process of fibrinolysis, there is a degradation product that used to be present in the menstrual blood. So how the formation of uh, this fibrin degradation product used to take place, or you can say how the formation and degradation of the fibrin polymer used to take place, that I am going to tell you. So what happened initially, the activation of the coagulation ultimately generates thrombin, and this thrombin used to catalyze the conversion of the fibrinogen to fibrin by cleaving the fibrinopeptide, which is a gray color, which is represented by the gray color. So it used to cleave this thing from the this three molecules, and these three molecules constitute as a fibrin polymer, sorry, fibrin monomer. So this fibrin monomer is composed of two D domain and one E domain. So the fibrin monomer are held together when a number of fibrin monomer will come together after the process of this fib this conversion, that is the formation of a fibrin. So these all fibrin monomer all will all come together and will combine with the help of a non-covalent bond. So here you can see that dotted structure is showing the non-covalent bond, and this is linked to the formation of a fibrin polymer. Now what happened, a cross-linking will take place, and now these non-covalent bonds are going to convert into the covalent bond, and that lead to the formation of a cross-linked fibrin polymer. So this cross-linked fibrin polymer used to play a major role in the in forming the clot. So what happened after this, this process used to take place upon the bleeding of a normal blood as well, and in the menstruation blood as well. But what happened next after this process, a plasmin protein used to come into the play. So what plasmin enzyme, so what it used to do is, it used to cleave, or it used to cleave this fibrin polymer into such a way that a fibrin degradation product will be formed. So this process of cleaving with the help of plasmin of a fibrin polymer into a fibrin degradation product is called as fibrinolysis. Okay, so this during fibrinolysis, plasmin cleaves the cross-linked fibrin at multiple sites, giving rise to fibrin degradation product, and that includes the D-dimer. What is D-dimer? As I already told you that it has a fibrin has the two D domain. Later on, these two D domains were covalently linked with each other while forming the polymer of the fibrin. So these covalent bonds are hard to break, thus they will retain as a single structure, and these D dimers are prominently present in the case of menstruation blood, whereas they are absent in the normal blood. But with an exception that these D dimers is also present in the case of a postmortem blood. But the thing is, in these the detection of the presence of postmortem blood is generally not has a less chances in case of sexual assault, because in the case of sexual assault the person usually is alive. If the person is alive, then there you can just elude the chances of having the postmortem blood, and thus the presence of D dimers will dictate the presence of menstrual blood, or the source is menstrual blood instead of the postmortem. So here how you could be able to distinguish. Now a number of tests could be used for the confirmation that whether these FTPs are present or not. So the test I am going to tell you in the next video. Thank you.